This is a Z80 development kit from Maplin. I think originally in the 1980s, probably late 1980s. This one was purchased in 1993, and I think it's the version 2 of the kit. So Maplin was a high street store which used to sell electronic components, and when it first started out, it probably pretty much specialised in just electronic components, and then it started doing electronic appliances and hi-fis and things like that. And it's a shame because towards the end of its life it stopped doing the components so much and just like stuck to the appliances, and it kind of sold anything I purchased from there after the year 2000 kind of always had a bit of an issue with it. But in the 90s, which is when this kit came from, it sold 74 series logic and CPUs and things like that, and it's a really good store. So in this video I'll go over the actual use of this system and show you some of the features, and then we'll take a look inside of it, and then at the end I'll go through some of the paperwork I've still got from the time I actually built this kit. So the kit came in several parts. You could buy the CPU board itself, and then you could buy the display and the keyboard, and then you could also buy the case separately. And then there was an EEPROM which went on the board, which is a simple monitor system, which is what I purchased, and it's actually controlled through here. So you see there's just the decimal places on here which are on from the time that the system is switched on. Got a reset button here which is taken off the actual system board, but in the documentation when we take a look at it a bit later, that wasn't like a standard. This is a standard case for the system. I've got a 16:2 LCD character display here, which I never actually connected up, and also non-standard was I put some terminal posts in here for the power supply and a variable resistor for doing the contrast of the LCD display. So I'll go through some of the features, and they're very simple. So you've got control key here, and you've got the letters which do certain actual features. So if I go control A, it goes into address mode, and you can enter an address 0860, which is where the start of my program is. Then control D to go into data mode, and B and F with the control keys backwards and forwards, and you can look at what's in memory there. If I go into an address, say 1200, I think there's a RAM there, so it's filled with zeros. So if I enter 1A forward and then go backwards, and you see 1A is in memory now. So if we go back to the start of the program memory, 0860. So the ROM goes from 0 to 7FF, I think it is, and then RAM starts at 800, but there's some system variables for the monitor ROM at 800, and so the program memory starts at about 860. So if I look at, you have to go, when you change the address, you always have to go backwards, forwards to look at what's in the first location. And then you can go control E to execute, and then you can enter address there while that is the start of the program. And then control C to start executing. I've got a program which just counts up in hex. So I've taken the 4 screws out which retain the top. And the last time I would have turned this on would have been probably 94 or something like that. So it hasn't really been used since then. And inside it's got the system board, the battery-backed RAM, but it's a NiCad battery, I think, so it doesn't leak, luckily enough. Otherwise that would have been a mess. I've still got a rubber band around the keyboard cable holding it sort of in a loop. And the rubber band still seems good, and usually rubber bands, they deteriorate really quickly. Then got the keyboard and 7-segment LED display there. And I've put like a connector in here so that I can take the top off. So if I unplug these items, and this is a 2 times 16 character display up there, which is probably one of the early models of that kind of thing, and I haven't actually connected that up even. When I opened it up originally, just before doing these videos, this cable was plugged in, well, it wasn't plugged into the top, but the CPU was plugged in here, and looks like I'd done a piggyback to try and get the wires out of the CPU to actually control the display, but I hadn't actually finished doing that. Maybe I'll finish doing that at some point. So, but looking at the system, so I've got a big heatsink here with a 7805 regulator on it, and the actual computer itself, the chips are, so this is a Z80A CPU. This is a keyboard display driver for the 7-segment displays on the keyboard. This is the ROM which was purchased, which has the monitor software on it, which came from Maplin. And then I've got 3 2K RAMs. Now this one would have come with the kit. These other two look like I pinched them from work or something. And then there's the logic to actually control the system. And there's dip switches here, which so for each of the RAMs you can decide whether or not you want them to be controlled from the battery or from the system, I think, something like that. But you can't do the ROM, of course. And then one of the RAMs is whether or not you got the keyboard connected or not. So it allows the interrupt to go to the edge connector at the back if you haven't got the keyboard connected. But if you do have the keyboard connected, then it redirects the interrupt to the keyboard, so the keyboard can use the interrupt. And the crystal at front, which is running at 4 MHz, so it's running at full Z80A speed. So I kept some stuff in a folder, the documentation, and I've got at the front some receipts. And on this first receipt, it actually has the itemised stuff for it. So this ABS console, that's a box, $665. Z80 keypad, which should be the actual 7-segment display on the keypad, £25. The Z80 CPU module kit, £33.45. And I've got some hardware like washers and screws for putting the case together and mounting the board in there. And then here's the monitor EEPROM, £6.95 there. So altogether I spent about £80 on this kit. So on the next page, I've got a couple of data sheets in here. So the CTC, it doesn't have a Z80 CTC, but I guess I was doing Z80 stuff at the time, so I just kept all this stuff together. A Z80 PIO, and these are actual sort of data sheets, official data sheets. These are probably the only, oh no, I might have some other data sheets, but most of my data sheets are PDF format data sheets, whereas these are actual official ones. And then with each of the bits of the kit, so the CPU board and the display, I got one of these which is to do with the actual assembly of the kit. So they're exactly the same, but what you got a copy with the CPU and the copy with the actual display stuff, and it just tells you about the operation of the system. And this is all just photocopied stuff which they sent out with the kit. Shows you how it should look when it's assembled and things. And it gives you like a little example program in here about how to check the memory, circuit diagrams and things. The kits were pretty good from Maplin. For some reason after 2000, when you got past the 90s, Maplin just went downhill. I guess it was the advent of the internet and people buying stuff online. I don't know. So you got a parts list packed by 7. Yeah, so it's a real shame really, because it was a great store when it was good, but it became an appalling store really, I think. So here's the magazine from the time. So I bought the kit in '93, so this is from 1992, the magazine. So I probably bought it based on this magazine because it had an article in there, and here it is. So yeah, they had the kit on the cover, and then the actual article itself was right at the back of this magazine, I think. So yeah, it talked about how to put it together and stuff. And so they sold the kit based on this article to at least me, and I put it in the official box and everything. And I got some of my assembly code that I did at the time, so that's dated the 7th, 93. And then I got data sheet for the display and keyboard driver so that I could do stuff with the display and the keyboard, and some more code that I did at the time. I got a feeling I might have done more code than that than I've got in here. Maybe I didn't print it all out, but I could tell this is printed. So my original printer was a dot matrix printer, which is really loud, but this wasn't printed on that. This must be my second printer, which is a bubble jet printer. I think it was a Canon BJ10 or something like that, BJ10EX, something like that.